I remember going into a new school not so long ago and being asked to develop the school's mission statement. And I thought, I have not the slightest idea in hell what a mission statement is. And I had to ask around. In fact, some students told me mission statements have become rather routine, as indeed they have. Mission statement is basically a promise that inevitably we're not going to keep, and that's rather sad. I think one should keep one's promises. I think one shouldn't make promises one cannot keep. And Rishi's 5 promises are impossible to achieve. I don't think he's going to manage to achieve any one of them, number one. Number two, I think some of them were absurd, and at least one of them was wrong. Stopping the boats is a slogan that he's picked up from Australia. The Australians, not only did they manage to stop the boats, not only did they manage to control migration, but they did so with a certain amount of honour. They processed the applications, and those applications that were found worthy were then followed up. Those applications that were not found worthy were offshored and moved along. And that's the way to do it. This is not what Suella Braverman and her cronies are proposing. Suella Braverman is proposing simply to offshore everything. And even those people who are found in need of asylum will have it processed in a third country. And this is madness. This is utter madness and deeply immoral. So when people pick up other people's slogans, as Rishi has done, I'm sure the people who proposed those slogans were proposing them with a lot of enthusiasm. But Rishi has barely been in the job. He's been an MP for 8 years. 8 years ago, I think I was quarrelling with Nigel Farage, and it seems like yesterday. And I think so much has happened in this last 8 years. We have taken our eye off the ball if we think that Rishi is a seasoned politician. Rishi is barely out of short trousers when it comes to the House of Parliament, when it comes to the Palace of Westminster, when it comes to the House of Commons. Barely out of short trousers. And there are people in the Parliament in Scotland who have more experience than Rishi Sunak. And the Palace of Holyrood and the Parliament in Scotland are considered by Westminster to be second best. Now, they've got it wrong. They've got it wrong. Our Prime Minister is the one who is gauche and who will, in the end, be so clearly unable to deliver. Now, Rest Mogg, the person who's being investigated by Ofcom, that toothless wonder, like being savaged by a geriatric Rottweiler. Rest Mogg tried to defend Rishi Sunak's 5 pledges. Again, I would say 5 pledges. Why make 5? We can only remember 3. Anyway, let's hear what he's got to say. He was, in terms of Rottweilers and geriatric Rottweilers, he was savaged by 2 individuals. One of them, Ben Habib, on the right wing, and the other one, Michael Crick, on the left wing. They both did for him. I mean, there's barely anything left of Rest Mogg.
So it was 6 months ago today that the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, made his 5 key pledges for the year. It just so happens, rather unfortunately, that today also marks the first time his approval rating has gone into negative territory on the Conservative Home rating, which is of Conservative supporters and interested parties. So whilst I'm often critical of the government, I think the PM's become rather an easy target because the pledges, which focused around the economy, the NHS, the small boats, have been affected by external factors that have made the Prime Minister's task harder. The NHS is still recovering from the pandemic. It's suffering from strikes. Doctors, even well-paid ones, seem to be thinking that they should walk out. Inflation has become entrenched because of the inept monetary policy of the Bank of England. And in terms of migration, the Court of Appeals just overturned the High Court's ruling on Rwanda, while the House of Lords is busy gutting the illegal migration bill. it really isn't the Prime Minister's fault. Sometimes politicians cannot deliver even when they make their best efforts. However, my panel's back, and I'm sure they may well disagree with me, former Brexit Party MEP Ben Habib and the author and broadcaster Michael Craig. Ben,
well,
Rishi's doing his absolute best, and he is beset by obstructionism from various glob-like quarters.
Well, for the first time, I find myself at odds with you, Jacob, if I may say so. Rishi is squarely responsible for having broken the economy. I find it quite amusing that during the leadership campaign, he kept saying, you know, I'm the responsible one, I understand numbers, I'm going to fix everything. Actually, he was the one who was Chancellor of the Exchequer at a time when the UK borrowed more money than it had in all of history until 2005. He did that in a year. He was the one who took taxes up to the highest level since World War II. He was the one who wanted to punish us with a national insurance increase, contrary to the Conservative Party manifesto, as we emerged from lockdowns, blinking as we were, rubbing our eyes, trying to make sense of the new world order into which we emerged. Rishi Sunak, I'm afraid, is squarely at the heart of the problems that the country faces. And the promises he made are disingenuous. And the reason I say that is because he made two in particular. One, that he would grow the economy, and the other, that he would reduce debt. No government in history has ever reduced debt. You can reduce debt as a proportion of GDP, but they are one and the same promise. And it was hoodwinking the public, Jacob, when he made that promise.
Pitt the Younger had the sinking fund, and Nigel Lawson had the public sector in credit. But
very,
never mind.
very few, then.
At the time he made these promises, I thought, this man's bonkers. These are not. I thought, I'm not sure he can keep any of those promises. I mean, maybe the NHS waiting times, he could, and it doesn't look like he's going to keep those now, or at least the turnaround is now predicted, sort of spring of next year. I mean, all of the other ones, it seemed to me, 6 months ago, were far too ambitious. I mean, stop the boats. I mean, a more sensible, a more experienced. I think one of the problems Sunak has, he's not actually been a politician for very long. He's only been a politician, well, an MP since, 2015, that's 8 years, and he wasn't in politics, you know, he was doing think tank stuff for about a year before that. He's a very inexperienced politician. No politician, and it's his
and he was quite junior in banking when he left banking.
You know,
people keep talking about his Goldman Sachs
history. There was no way he was going to stop the boats in 18 months. He might have been able to reduce the number of boats, in which case you come up with a promise like that. Inflation, it seemed to me, was likely to go on for a lot longer than we thought 6 months ago.
Because lots of people didn't. Lots of economists thought that was quite an easy promise because they thought
I know they
following
did.
other countries down. But the Bank of England is surely more responsible for that than Rishi Sunak.
And cutting the debt. I mean, as Ben says, cutting the debt now, reducing the annual debt, the annual PSPR.
That may be a target you can achieve.
And cutting the debt as a percentage of GDP was, I think, what he meant.
Exactly. But he didn't say that. He didn't say that, though, did he?
And whoever drew up that list of promises should be sacked. And Sunak has got a lot to answer for. He's going to do him, you know, it's going to humiliate him.
Yeah.
Well, the only problem is, when have these promises got to be achieved? End of this year, by the election? Either way, it's quite likely he'll get, there'll be a whitewash for the other side.
The real problem, I think, the Prime Minister has, is that he's absent of ideas. You know, he
had 5 promises. These were great ideas.
But they weren't. They were great mission statements. Yeah. But he's got no mechanism. He's articulated no mechanism by which to deliver them. What he's doing is more of the same of what got us into this problem in the first place.
If we get on the small boats, where he really has done things, he's been thwarted by the appeal court, which was surprising because
Jacob,
the High Court
I'm going to have to disagree with you.
And the House of Lords. Come on, you're not going to defend the House of Lords.
No, I'm going to say the illegal migration bill, as drafted, simply doesn't work. There is no one in the country, I think, who would want more to stop the boats than I would. But there's a carve-out for the European Court of Human Rights in the illegal migration bill. In the first instance, it directs the Home Secretary to detain and deport people who enter the country, and then it gives her a carve-out if the ECHR should disagree. And that undermines the whole bill.
Even if the House of Lords we're in perhaps the surprising position that I am Mr. Sunak's greatest defender on TV News this evening. But thanks to my panel.
So there we have it, Rest Mogg, pilloried by his own people. And no doubt he's going to say, well, we have no more time, got to go on. Sorry, I'm covered in dust. I've been making some models. I've been doing some sculpture stuff, but this is Shakespeare.